The first one with regarding to powers to issue fines to parents whose children are out in a public place while suspended from school. Now, 45% agreed, which is a fair amount, but then the 53.7% of the rest were either against or unsure. Now, you're reconsidering this proposal because of the feedback. Just talk us through some of the issues here. Were you confident with this, or were you just floating this as a possible solution?
It was put forward as an idea by the department in order to try and address issues that seem to be developing within society. So what we're seeing is increasing numbers of young people out. They've been suspended from school. Instead of being kept at home, which is what should happen, they're then actually on the streets, going to the school gates and causing a nuisance when they have been suspended. So it was an attempt to try and address that issue. Obviously, we'll now need to rethink that and actually look at what we do and how we can begin to address that as a potential problem. Whether suspension in that format actually meets the requirements that we have going forward.
But doesn't suspension put a lot of pressure on the parent then to be supervising their child? And if you have two parents, say at work, or maybe there's obviously complications to that. Do you think a fine would be fair in that context?
Well, that's part of the problem, that they're not actually supervising the children when they have been suspended. So, yes, there is an issue there that we need to actually look at and go back to trying to address in some other way.
Okay, moving to the second of the two divisive issues, if you will, the catchment areas. Now, this is one people get passionate about. Obviously, parents obviously know what's best for their children, but the department has to work and make things, schools are equal and everything work efficiently, I suppose, if that's the correct word. Now, what were the issues with this? I mean, do you have a kind of an idea of what policy you want to introduce already? Are you going to stick with what you've got, or what kind of ideas are you floating out there?
What we need to do is actually ensure that we can manage our schools as effectively as possible. We put a lot of money, time, effort into those schools. If it was completely free and open, what we'd find is that people would all be wanting to go to particular schools, and we have a policy of not closing our schools. So therefore, it needs to be managed. Having a free-for-all would lead to potential problems.
If you're educating people in their communities, they make friends in their communities, and the children go out and play outside of school in their communities. If you've got them going to a school that's outside of where their community is, then that actually doesn't stimulate them to be able to learn, and also to be able to have friendships and a social life and part of the community that they would have if they went to their catchment school.
But different schools offer different things, and parents may want different things for their children, different needs. So how do you combat that? Because obviously not every school is the same.
Not every school is the same in the sense of possibly what is outside of school, if you like. Sort of extracurricular activity outside of school would differ, but the teaching within the school is exactly the same whichever primary school you go to, and it is only really and secondary schools the same actually. So you have a catchment area for a secondary school that's built on feeder schools that are around it. And so therefore, actually, the quality of the education is exactly the same whichever primary school you go to on the Isle of Man. It's that actually we've got them spread across the island, and we want to keep that and keep them in the communities as part of what they need to be. And if we allow them to have catchment areas or no catchment areas, then actually people will favour going what's near to work, say, which could be one thing. But most of the responses, when we looked at the detail behind them, it was all about childcare after school. And grandparents living somewhere else, so they wanted to go to a school near where the grandparents lived because they would be looking after the children after school. And that's actually a responsibility of the parents, not the education system.
I'll direct this one to you, Andrew, which is building on what you said about the policy of not closing schools. Due to the fact that our population is distributed unevenly, is that going to be sustainable in future, do you think?
What we need to do is actually be prepared for the future. We have housing estates springing up all over the island. It would make no sense whatsoever to actually close a school because population was low, and then a big developer comes in, builds a big housing estate. Oh, with no school, what do? So we want to be prepared for the future and use the money and investment that we've already put into our existing schools. It'd be pointless actually closing somewhere down and then suddenly realising, hang on, we need the school in that particular location. At the moment, they are distributed widely across the island, and we are able to sustain them by managing the situation, which is why we need catchment areas, and we need to tighten up what we've got, because what we do find is that people are putting in out of catchment requests, and the reasons behind that sometimes are quite tenuous, and it does come down to childcare, which is not an educational reason.